I'm Sam Rose, and you're tuning in to Commerce is Chaos, the podcast for consumer brand founders who know that building a business is messier than the highlight reel shows. Your supplier just missed their deadline, your top product is out of stock, and your competitor somehow launched the same thing at half the price. Sound familiar? Every week, we dive into the real problems that keep founders up at night, from inventory disasters to supply chain nightmares, because surviving the chaos is what separates brands that fail from brands that scale. Yeah. Well, I'm so excited to talk to you about Evergreen. And I love your story of just going from like a home Vitamix to a really, really big number that we can share publicly if you wish or not in retail sales last year. And what I can say is like almost 10,000 stores, Walmart, Whole Foods, Target, Kroger, like the wish list, really, like the CPG wish list. And I know you're about to double that, or at least projecting to double that. So I would love to hear just the origin story and the Vitamix story and what color Vitamix you had. And did the motor ever overheat on you?
It's still the Vitamix I use today. I didn't always love Mondays and didn't always sit down excited to work on Monday mornings. Making waffles was certainly not my career path that I expected for myself. I graduated from Harvard Law School in 2015, set on a career in corporate law. I moved back to Chicago and I live now, and started working for a big firm in the corporate group doing private equity deals. And it's a really long story, but to make it shorter, to keep the audience engaged, basically I had my now 7-year-old daughter, and I knew I was going to need something like a frozen waffle to feed her. I was a working mom. I had 30 minutes in the morning to get something in her mouth and run out the door and catch the train. But I'd always loved food. I had always been really thoughtful about what I fed myself. I liked to cook things from scratch. So I knew I didn't want to feed her the frozen waffle brand in the yellow box that we all know from our childhoods. And so I started looking for what better for you options were available on the market. And I went to my local health food store and flipped around a bunch of packages and started kind of inspecting the ingredients lists. And to my dismay, realized, and this was in 2018, realized that like all of the better for you frozen waffles at the time were basically like that brand in the yellow box, just in healthier looking packaging. But actually the ingredients were pretty much the same. Yeah, the ingredients were pretty much the same. I still had to Google a bunch of stuff to figure out what it was. And I just had this moment where I was like, I really don't want to settle for this. I can kind of compromise and make big batches of waffles on the weekends. I bought this mini waffle iron, which I keep right next to me.
Oh my gosh.
This is the OG waffle iron.
Does it have a name?
It doesn't, but it should.
Oh, we gotta name it. Can we name it?
Yeah, I'll take suggestions.
All right, I'll be percolating. There we go.
Yeah. And so I started making big batches of waffles on Sundays. That was my compromise. And I basically would open my fridge and open my pantry and pull out the most nutritious kind of real food ingredients I could find. So whole grain wheat flours, eggs, nuts, spices, real fruits and veggies. And I throw them into my Vitamix. And that's how I made my batter. And then I'd have, Ziploc bags full of frozen waffles. I stick them in the freezer, and that's what we would pull from during the week to feed my daughter. And after about a year of watching her devour them, like she truly loved them and ate them right up, and realizing not only how good I felt about giving them to her because I knew they were truly, preparing her for the day, they were nutritious, but also just selfishly how much easier it made my life to not have to think about one thing in the morning and have that box already checked for me. I decided I probably wasn't the only one out there who wanted something like it. So set off on this wild journey that is CPG and grocery retail to try to figure out how to get a product on a grocery store shelf with exactly zero background in CPG or grocery retail. And fast forward about 5 years, and as you said, we're nearing about 10,000 stores. So we figured out quite a few things along the way, but have a long way to go as well.
Okay, I think you figured out the name because it's the waffle that launched 1,000 waffles. So she's probably Helen, really.
Oh, I love it. That's so
if
good.
It's a boy, Troy, take your bet.
Oh, it's really good. Really, really good. I'll ask my kids. I'll pull my kids and let them decide the final answer.
Yeah, it's really it's their decision ultimately. I defer to them in all things.
As most things are, yeah.
So, okay, I love this story. I have such,
heartfulness around just like experiencing a problem and then like having fun coming up with the solution, then realizing like, wait, maybe I can give this to people. There's such generosity of spirit that really defines entrepreneurs like you. And it's so inspiring because I have to say, as a customer, like my kids are obsessed with these waffles. And as a
Thank
parent, I'm
you.
like, Emily's got my back. Tell
You
me.
just explained the brand perfectly. Like that is our hope to have to make parents feel like we have their back.
Well, mission accomplished, at least one, but probably thousands of us.
Thank you.
Tell me about the vegetables that you're sneaking into the waffles. And like, did your kids even notice, or are they excited about that? Do they not care? Do they even know?
Well, it's funny you ask because this has actually partly guided our product innovation and our pipeline. So at a young age, don't even notice, right? And you can see in our mini waffles, so in our zucchini carrot cake, for example, you could see bits of real carrots and real zucchini in there. We still use fresh carrots and zucchini for that SKU. As my 7-year-old, now 7-year-old, got older, her preference of which, and it's funny, they like kids, and I'm told this by parents all the time that kids rotate through their favorite flavors and they often call them by like the color of the bag. Like people come up to me and be like, my kid loves the orange one or the yellow one. And so for my 7-year-old, the orange one, zucchini carrot cake, was always her favorite as a little kid. And then as she started to get older, she migrated to peanut butter banana bread. And I was always under the impression and believed that it was probably because you can't see the veggies in the peanut butter banana bread. All of our mini waffles have carrot, zucchini, apple, and pea in them, but some are in powder form, so they are truly hidden. And then some, like I said, in zucchini carrot, you can actually see pieces of them. And so she like was pretty exclusively eating the peanut butter banana bread as she was starting to get older and started to kind of talk to her about why and what she might want to see going forward. And what I decided from just observing her behavior, and then obviously we confirmed this with consumer insights, is as she was getting older, she was getting a little pickier. Like she was a little less open to seeing vegetables in her waffles. And so and she also had a bigger appetite. So she was eating multiple waffles at a time. Like one waffle was no longer enough for her. And so it started our wheels turning. And we actually just launched our second product line. They're called Thick and Fluffy. They're basically bigger waffles for bigger kids with bigger appetites. And the veggies are fully hidden. There, you cannot see any veggies. So basically, as you were saying about innovating based on your own need and your own problem, like still very much doing that, still very much guiding our innovation pipeline. But when we did kind of concept testing, it affirmed the N of one that was my own daughter and that older kids would really love the Thick and Fluffies. So these launched nationwide at Whole Foods in September. We've got a bunch of big, exciting launches coming up, but they've been flying off the shelves from day one. So we're really excited about them.
That's so cool. Okay, so something you just said caught my ear because your customers changing over time, right? The kids, like, their tastes change, and so you've got this moving target of preferences to follow
Mm-hmm.
and to sort of innovate around, which is so interesting because I feel like that's true of CPG just because like flavors trend and we're as humans, we're all experienced machines. We like to try new things, but it happens on such a shorter time frame for kiddos, and
Mm-hmm.
something that's like really working on day one. You're like, wait a second, like now my 5-year-old's like sees a pea and they're like, nope.
Right, exactly.
How is that influencing like next steps? Is there innovation you just got done with one launch, so I'm not saying you have to launch
Oh,
another.
we have so much
So much
at
in the
work
pipeline.
already. Yes.
Tease us with anything?
I can't tease you with any specifics other than to say that we've got a lot of innovation in the pipeline. And kind of with every potential product we look at, we do look at like who within the family does this serve. We are very thoughtful about wanting to grow with our consumer, as you said. I mean, some of the brands that I most admire take, for example, Once Upon a Farm, I think has done such an effective job of growing with their consumer and kind of tacking on years to that consumer's quote unquote life with their brand. And so that is our goal as well. I think we've done a really successful job so far of winning these loyal consumers at a young age. So now let's grow with them. So Thick and Fluffies was a first step. I think we've got some products that will continue to be a solution for similar aged kids, the like 6 to 12. And then we've got our next products that are going to be more like teenagers as well. So you'll continue to see us grow with our consumer. I'll say that.
I was going to say, I bet. So my kids are 12 and 10 and 8, and they've gone through this kind of same cycle of violence with what they'll eat for
Yep.
breakfast. And
I've got stuff coming for your oldest one.
yeah, all right. I'm going to let him know. Let's go back for a moment to sort of the beginning of all of this. You made your way from corporate law to restaurant law or hospitality law at Alinea. Alinea is like such an extraordinary experience. If you're in Chicago and have an opportunity to go, highly recommended. It was one of the most mind-blowing. And I've been to Alinea both pregnant and not pregnant, which were very different experiences for me personally.
Very different. Yes.
But what I loved about, here's a small personal anecdote. I promise we'll get back to you in a second. So I'm pregnant. I'm at Alinea, which is this like very fine dining, multi-hour experience. And they have a juice tasting menu and a sparkling water tasting pairing.
But
and so I had the juice pairing.
But of course.
With the Alinea menu. And that level of extraordinary hospitality is like so thoughtful. And I can say, as people who watch this podcast a lot, like I always have a glass of sparkling water in my hand. I am a sparkling water connoisseur, and their sparkling water tasting menu
was amazing.
Amazing. And really amazing. I guess my taste in sparkling water hasn't changed that much over time. I'm a static consumer.
What is your favorite sparkling water?
My favorite is, oh my gosh, and it was just in my mind and now it's not. It starts with a G. It's German.
Oh,
why did it just pop out of my head? What was it? Goffelstein. It's not Goffelstein. I drink a lot of Pellegrino. Let's just spit it out. You know what has the bubbles are too big for me? Are so respectfully, God love it, Topo Chico. Really big bubble.
I love Topo Chico.
I feel that there's like a spectrum of bubble size.
Yes, 100 for sure. Yeah.
And
so
Topo
funny.
Chico is just like one step too far.
That's so funny.
For me.
Anyway, we digress. Yes, when I said that I was telling the shorter version of the story earlier, I skipped over the whole Alinea step. But
let's go on to it.
Yeah,
Gerolsteiner.
Also,
sorry.
What?
Gerolsteiner. Little bubbles.
I will look it up. So I also didn't expect to end up as the lawyer for a restaurant group either. But as I alluded to in the beginning of this chat, I'd always loved food. Food was my hobby. When I wasn't at the office, you'd find me in the kitchen baking from scratch. You'd find me flipping, like I read, Bon Appetit and Food and Wine cover to cover every issue. I watched all of the food TV shows from Top Chef to Chef's Table. And one night I was watching Chef's Table, and it was the Alinea episode. And I sat there on the couch and was just so overwhelmed with inspiration. I, didn't love my job. I wasn't feeling particularly fulfilled. And I was just watching these chefs who were so deeply passionate, as you experienced, about their craft. And I was like, I want to be in that world, and opened my laptop. I Googled Nick Kokonis, who's the co-founder of the restaurant group with Chef Achatz. I found his email address and I sent him a cold email. And I basically said, I'm a lawyer who loves food. Are you looking for in-house counsel? And attached my resume. And I sent it off and I closed my computer and went on with my night. I assumed I'd never hear from him again. And 18 minutes later, my phone buzzed. And 2 weeks after that, I was hired to be his general counsel.
Holy smoke.
That is how I made the leap. And it was, as cool as like the job general counsel for the Alinea Group sounds, like it was that cool. It was an amazing job. For a lawyer who loves food, it truly doesn't get better than that. My favorite days were when I got to work out of our offices were in the Fulton Market District of Chicago, which is separate from Alinea. But once in a while, I would go work out of Alinea so that my face was known, and I would sit at the kitchen table at Alinea and just type away and watch the chefs work. And a chef would come over and be like, would you like some coffee? And I'd say, sure. And they'd bring me like the most incredible cup of coffee ever. But what was so formative about that experience was they really taught me how to be an entrepreneur. And I didn't even really know it was happening, but it's hard for it not to rub off on you in that environment, which, if you watch the Chef's Table episode or you know anything about Alinea, these guys are infamous for or famous for constantly
Oh,
questioning the status quo. So, one of the most famous desserts or items on the menu is the dessert where the chefs come out and instead of like having dessert on a plate, they paint dessert right on your table. And it's like choreographed to music and it's this whole show. And in the Chef's Table episode, Chef Hackett says, I sat there and I was like, why do I need to be constrained to a plate? Like, why can't the entire table be my canvas? And that mentality pervaded everything that they did at Alinea. And I split my 10-50-50 between Alinea and Talk, the reservation
yeah.
software that they started to kind of solve the problems they were experiencing with reservation softwares with Alinea. And so like that trickled down to my legal work too. And so it totally reprogrammed my brain such that when I was driving home from work one night and I was listening to a podcast that happened to be talking about frozen waffles of all things. And in the kind of Cliff Notes version of the podcast is that, saying frozen waffles are this massive category in grocery retail, $1.3 billion. And at the time it was 80% that brand I alluded to earlier. And in the moment I sat there and I was pregnant with my first daughter, but I sat there and I heard that fact and I was like, what? Why hasn't there been more innovation? And I need to like go figure out what to do about this. And I don't think if I had, I think if I hadn't been working at Alinea, that fact would have gone in one ear and out the next, and I never would have thought about it again.
You had permission to
Yes.
just break the rules, and I feel so much affinity to that story, and I too was sort of like leaving a job that I love and taking this like wild leap, but just thought, okay, it's time, and I've got this idea that is exploding out of me, and I think that it's gonna change people's lives, or at least their moments that they
Yeah.
treasure with families and in the kitchen. Yeah, being in an innovative environment really gives you permission to do that. And whenever, we're sort of a few companies pass now for us, and whenever we've had a few employees leave to go start their own businesses, and it's like the most thrilling success and win ever when
Oh,
someone says, I gotta go because I'm gonna go do a
cool.
thing. I'm like, yes. But I'm so sad to
That's
lose you.
really cool.
Um so
So I will say that like it's hard to deprogram the lawyer out of a lawyer. And
well,
so I did have some risk aversion lingering. So I didn't I heard the podcast, I was pregnant with my daughter, and I was like, well, I'm gonna need a frozen waffle, as I said, like I'm not gonna have time to cook from scratch, but I don't want to feed her that brand. So like, why hasn't there been more innovation? I'm just gonna make my own. And like I said, it took me like a year of feeding it to her before I thought, okay, actually, like maybe it's just not me. Like maybe I could be the innovation
yeah,
that needs to happen here. And even then, I walked into Nick's office and I asked to drop down a part-time. I did not quit
yeah,
right out. So I dropped down to 3 days a week and I worked on Evergreen 2 days a week. And maybe he had a similar experience. I don't know. I was so nervous for that conversation. Um, and he was basically like, if you can do our work in 3 days a week, I don't care what you do in the other two. So he
yeah.
was supportive. Maybe a little part of him was proud that he had taken the lawyer out of the girl, or tried to at least. And then I didn't actually quote unquote retire from my day job until we'd been in Whole Foods for 6 months. So it
Oh,
like took
wow.
me a long time
Yeah.
to fully take the leap. But everybody's got to do it in their own way.
Yeah. Well, but speaking of you, but you've made some risky, or I should say bold choices with your brand. Like I remember the original packaging, which was sort of green and had this perception, like there was a certain shelf perception of it, of like, this is healthy and it's vegan maybe. And it's like all of these assumptions that you make about looking at something in like a green and brown package. I'm probably
Yep.
hurting some feelings right now. And but the packaging didn't tell the story in the way that you wanted it to. And of course, as you shared at the beginning of our conversation, if children are in part helping their parents make buying decisions around your product and they want the orange one or they want the blue one, they need to be able to identify it and be part of that story too. So tell us a little bit about just the packaging changes, the reformulation, and then what that did for the business.
It changed everything. The week the new packaging rolled out on shelf, and it was a flow through change. So it wasn't like, it was on shelf everywhere all at once, but the week it just started showing up in certain spots, our velocities jumped 62%. So wild what a rebrand can do. We started having conversations about the rebrand kind of beginning of 2023. Or my VP of marketing at the time came up to me and she was like, what is your goal for the company? Like, what is your dream? What do you believe this can be? And I told her, like, I think we can be the next big frozen breakfast brand. And she said, awesome. I think you're the leader to do it. I think we got the product to do it, or nearly. But let me tell you, this brand is not going to do it. Nope. The white packaging with the green letters, not going to be the next big frozen breakfast brand. So we decided in true kind of scrappy startup form, that we were going to use Expo West. It was our first time exhibiting in March 2023. We were going to use Expo West as a way to interview thousands of people about their experience with the packaging and with the product. And the number one piece of feedback we heard was that people were like, this is so much better than we thought it would be. And we were like, well, we're delighted that you like the product. Why did you expect it to be that? And exactly what you said. We heard it over and over and over again. People were like, I don't know, what, like the white packaging, and the green letters, it screams like health. A lot of people did think it was vegan. Even the font on Evergreen was a really harsh, it had very sharp corners, and it wasn't that kind of warm hug on a plate feeling that you should get from a warm, delicious waffle. And after Expo West, I turned to her and I was like, we absolutely have to rebrand. We had both had experiences with our kids being drawn like moths to a flame to a brand that had really bright kind of rainbow-esque packaging, a different color per SKU. And so we knew that was the direction we wanted to go in. We interviewed so many branding agencies. And I'll never forget our VP marketing turned to me one day. She's like, Emily, if we want the rebrand to hit shelves in January 2024, like you just got to make a decision. Like we've got so many great agencies. You just got to choose one. And we had one call left, and it was an agency called Tarmac. And we had the call with them, and I was like, they're it. They're our agency. And they took our ideas and our feedback and they ran with it. And I mean, what they produced it was a dream. Like it really was exactly what we wanted and more. And I think it really was the inflection point for our brand and kickstarted this momentum that has just continued to snowball since.
Okay, I want to dig into that decision a little bit more, which isn't a question I plan to ask you, but having run an agency of my own in the past, this is such a hard, and then also been a consumer of agencies, it's a really hard decision. Like you're going to be in the trenches with these people. And giving feedback about creative work is one of the hardest things to get really good at because it becomes so personal, right? And so you have to be able to deliver feedback that sounds like, ew, I don't like it. Go back to the drawing board, throw that away and keep working without like feeling self-conscious about hurting someone's feelings. And for that, you have to have very quickly a relationship where you've built trust and mutual respect and understanding so that like, if you are throwing their work into the trash, they're like, okay, I get it. And like, We're going to build from there.
Cards on the table. Your tech stack is held together with duct tape and prayers. If you're a brand founder or COO juggling Shopify, your 3PL portal, 3 different inventory trackers, and yes, that one crucial Google Sheet, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Orders get lost, inventory counts are fiction, and your seamless integrations break every other Tuesday. Endless Commerce changes the game. One platform for everything. DTC, wholesale, marketplaces, the works. AI-powered forecasting, real-time inventory visibility, and integrations that actually integrate. Teams like Great Jones, Food 52, and Pattern Brands already made the switch. Ready to ditch the chaos? Visit endlesscommerce.com. Mention Commerce is Chaos when you reach out and get 3 months free. Because your ops stack should be your competitive advantage, not your biggest headache.
Yeah, what were you looking for in all of those different agencies? How did Tarmac stand out for you? And what gave you kind of like that early sense of like, okay, these guys, they get us, and maybe also I'm not going to hurt their feelings when I throw their stuff in the trash.
Right. Combination of things. I think first, I think you get a sense with people, whatever position you're interviewing them for, whether like the people on the Tarmac team, we were kind of like, yeah, we'd love to go get a drink with them someday. And in fact, whenever I'm in Austin, we do that. We always get dinner and drinks. They were fun and the type of people that we wanted to be in the trenches with. So that was definitely helpful. But I will say, like, there were many other agencies where the people were great too. This is why it took us so long to make a decision, because it was like, so many of these would be incredible. And we looked at their past work and looked at kind of the vibes, right? And I think a lot of agencies do have a vibe, although, also a lot of agencies can do lots of different things really well too. But they had some case studies on rebrands they'd done recently that suggested to us that they got it. Like, they got the bright color. They could do the bright, punchy color and the really delicious looking food on front of pack really well. And obviously, like, price point is a factor too. But I think, like, the personality of the team, their portfolio of work really kind of spoke for themselves. And they also just, once we started working with them, they over delivered at every stage. Like, they told us they were going to give us, 3 alternatives, and they always came back with like 6, and they were all amazing. And we found that to be the case every time we go to them. So they're incredible partners, and we just caught up yesterday about all the new innovation I was talking about. But they really hit it out of the park. I would recommend them to anybody.
How long did it take you to go from like, we're going to do a rebrand and or like signing engagement, right? To we've got new packaging, we're on the shelves?
Probably, I think we signed up with them in April of 23, and new packaging hit shelves in January. It was a sprint, and that felt like a sprint. It was really a sprint, because if you think about it, like, the product hitting shelves in January is produced in early December. So packaging has to be ordered, go back probably 8 weeks before that. So it was fast.
Let's stay in scrappy startup mode. You bootstrapped for a long time. You're packing your own boxes, you're handling sales, you're running production. And I want to talk about your production process too in a minute. But you brought on some institutional investors, and you're planning for the next stage of growth. Where were you looking to have the business as you were kind of making that decision of like, hey, I'm going to bring in some capital partnership now, because it's like, it's time to hockey stick this thing?
Yeah, I basically had decided, well, I also didn't hire anybody for the first 3 years. So I was the only employee for the first 3 years.
For 3 years?
Yeah, it wasn't like probably the best decision in hindsight. I would have finally been hired earlier, probably. There are benefits, of course, but I think the primary benefit is that I got to gather a lot of data from the market on what people thought about the product. And before I started hiring, we had some sales, we had some traction, which helped me attract incredible talent right out of the gate. And then ultimately really incredible investors. But yeah, maybe it would have been better not to stumble around, figuring things out for 3 full years. So in a lot of ways, it feels like we've only really been around for 2.5 years. But basically, I kind of looked around and I was like, I've taken this as far as I can by myself. And that means both team-wise and funds-wise. We were in about 650 doors in the beginning of 2023 when I started to bring in outside capital and build out a team. And so from the beginning of 2023 to now, we scaled from 650 doors to 8,500. So it's incredible what people and and cash can do for you in this business.
Yeah. But also doing those things yourself is so invaluable. And I think what I love most about it, kind of like that real grinded out founder bootstrap journey, is that you develop such empathy for the future help that you ask for and that you need. If you've packed boxes for yourself, then like when you're asking someone else to pack boxes, you're like a much nicer asker. Like, ask way better questions. It's almost like education, is connected to education and empathy really go hand in hand here.
I love that you said that, because I actually say that all the time to people, because I often get the question like, what's been the hardest thing? And I'm like, well, it's really hard to choose one thing to say. But everything's pretty hard, but the manufacturing journey has been really hard. And I started working out of a shared commercial kitchen, and then found a small co-man outside of the city of Chicago, and then outgrew them. And in my mind, or people ask like, what's the biggest mistake you've made? And at that time, this was at the end of 2020, I had seen how a small co-man worked, and I decided that, and I had gone to every manufacturing run. I left my house at 3:30 in the morning. I didn't get home until 8:30 at night. I was like quality control. I was so obsessed with the quality of our product that I just like breathe down these poor people's neck for, 8 hours, or not 8 hours. How many hours is that?
Like
So
from the
many.
chef's table at the Go Man, basically. Did they bring
Exactly.
you
No, for
coffee?
16 hours because it was two shifts. Yeah, 16 hours a day. You can probably picture me just like watching everything. And so after that experience, I was like, well, like I now know how to make our product at scale. And I also recognize that we're not big enough yet to go from this small manufacturing model to a big manufacturer who has that whole QA team so that I don't need to be there for every second of every run. And so I was like, you know what? Why don't I just open my own facility? And I did just that at 7 months pregnant with my second kid in 2021. And like I said, sometimes that's what I cite as like the thing that I would not do again if I was going to go back and do this again. However, to your point, it was the hardest year of my life. And I only had that facility for 1 year because at the end of that year, we got Sprouts nationwide. And I was basically like, I either need to invest a lot more in people and equipment and like probably never see my family again, or maybe I can go now and try these big co-packers again and see if like we've reached the size where they'll take us. And fortunately, we had reached the size where they would take us. So I was able to close down that facility. But what self-producing for a whole year taught me was empathy for manufacturers. Like it is a really hard business. And I think it's impossible to know that unless you are physically making your product. And so I pride myself in having really strong relationships with our manufacturers because I did it for a year. Like I
Right.
recognize that I think it's the hardest part of the business. And so I bring that empathy to those relationships. And as a result, we've had some really successful long-term relationships with our manufacturing partners.
But probably as a kind of innovation first brand, that probably really helps you in that process too, right? Because if you know like literally how it's made, then you can kind of riff on that in a way that is like appropriately tethered to reality, right? Like there's sort of like
Right.
the big imagination type of innovation where you're like, rules don't exist and neither does physics, and I'm just gonna do whatever. But then there's
Yeah.
the real part of the
Yeah.
program where you're like, okay, cool brainstorming. Now let's like make it happen.
Yep.
And I have found that like a deep knowledge of the product development life cycle, of manufacturing processes, of the chemistry of it all has helped me sort of like make my dream ideas come true in a
Yeah.
much more like streamlined way. And I don't have like manufacturing, angry
Totally.
manufacturers.
Yeah, and I still I still do kind of the first pass at product formulations when we're launching new products. And but you're right. Like when I am formulating, I keep in the back of my mind, they're not gonna be using a single mini waffle iron over there. Like I need to think about what might apply, at a manufacturing facility. So yeah, I'm with you totally.
Are there rules that you thought that you couldn't break that then like years in with more experience and kind of more knowledge you were able to break?
I kind of think that I broke rules from day one because I had no idea what I was doing. I have zero experience in CPG. You referenced my Vitamix. Like I literally showed up to our first manufacturing run with my Vitamix, sincerely believing that they were going to continue making batter in my Vitamix. And then the head of the manufacturing facility was like, "What are you doing with your household blender in my facility?" So no, so as a result, yeah. So as a result, I feel like I broke rules from day one. I was told by lots of people like, that like the ingredients, they're too clean, like they're gonna stick to equipment, it's not gonna work. And lo and behold, we figured out a way to make it work, and it wasn't always easy, but we did it. And so I also think that mentality is frankly like why I ended up or accurately, naivete is why I ended up in Frozen. I didn't know that Frozen was hard. Nobody told me. But as a result, there was all this room for innovation and improvement in Frozen. And there I was stumbling into Frozen because I didn't know any better. And as a result, had a real opportunity to really improve and shake up a category that needed it. So yeah, I
I
think
think there's
naivete in
something,
a lot of ways in this process has been a
yeah,
strength.
it's so true. And I think that's one of the things that allows someone like you to enter a part of the industry where the bar is really high, where basically everybody knows better, right? We know cold chain's really hard. You'd be crazy to do that. Like, maintaining like a really healthy ingredient list at scale is really hard. You'd be crazy to want to do that. And like no one's doing that. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, we're just going to try. And we'll say, how hard could it be? And it's easier. Yeah, sometimes it's easier to break the rules when you don't really know what they are. They're there. You just don't know them.
Yes, agreed.
What's been your process for maintaining that really clean ingredient list as you scale? Now that I've pulled that rabbit out of the hat.
Yeah, I
Or
mean,
no, I let the cat out of the
unfortunately,
bag. Wrong metaphor.
I mix up metaphors all the time. It means, unfortunately, that in a lot of the cases, manufacturers are bringing in our ingredients just for us, which
Mm.
means, we're not tapping into their buying power or anything. I was just talking with one of our manufacturers about this, and they're like, we think maybe literally all of your ingredients we only use for you. So that is not always the most efficient, but that inefficiency is worth it to have a label like we do. For sure. Yeah, I mean, things are more expensive, right? Like avocado oil is a lot more expensive than canola oil, but it's important to us and it's important to our consumer, and so we stick with it. I think like my mantra really, and I've heard this said and kind of phrased in different ways over the last few weeks, but like I create products that I need for my kids and I will feed to my kids. And so that's my bar really, is like, what do I feel comfortable feeding to my kids? Somebody else was talking to me about Evergreen the other day, and they're like, we love your brand so much because kids deserve better. And that really is what we're trying to do, deliver a truly better option for our kids who do
Yeah.
deserve better.
And, and I think, this industry, especially, there's so much to be said for data and analytics and like data-driven choices. But also sometimes you can just build for you and just trust that like there's people like you
Mm-hmm.
that are going to want the thing that you want for pretty much the same reasons that you want it,
Yeah, it is. I think you have to be careful. I think there is totally like paralysis by analysis. Speaking of mixing up metaphors, paralysis by analysis is a real thing for sure. And totally, you can use only data to decide what your pipeline looks like. But I really believe in gut and feel and personal experience. And like, it's got to be a blend of the art and science. I think what we do now is kind of come up with the idea and the general direction based on personal experience and what my family needs, what my friends' families need, what my teammates' families need. And then we kind of affirm that direction through the data. And we love data over here. My VP of sales spent 5 years at Spin. So she's like very sophisticated on the data side and can get us any insights we want and digest it, present it in a super digestible way. But I do think you can't lose that feel. And that's like, I think our products, I hope you can feel the love kind of infused in them, because it really does. They all come from an authentic need from our families.
I mean, it jumps off the shelf. It absolutely does. As one consumer to another,
Thank you.
I can feel the love. Okay, I'm going to ask you a question that you don't interpret however you want how to answer this question. What are you afraid of? You seem fearless. Like, is there anything in business specifically? Like I'm afraid of the dark sometimes in business.
Like so many things, I am, I'm afraid of, like, in this world, running out of money. Fortunately, I learned like you fundraise early, right? These things take longer than you expect, so you start early so you don't run out of money. I consider that one of my number one, if not my number one job, is to make sure the company doesn't run out of money so we can keep building this thing that we all love so much and feel so strongly about. Yeah, I mean, I worry, my hope is that people keep discovering, right? And it keeps discovering our products and trying our products and loving them, and it just keeps continuing to build upon itself as it has. And fortunately, we've got a really great toolkit to make sure that people keep discovering and trying them, and we know people will love them. But yeah, like, you better believe that as soon as our weekly velocity reports come out, I open it and scroll through it and like make sure everything looks good. But yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's like the same with people saying like, what's the most challenging thing? Like, everything. Like, what are you scared of? Everything. But and that's too, like, I tell people budding entrepreneurs all the time who come to me and ask for advice. And I always say, like, make sure you're building something authentic, because it's really hard and it's really scary. But if you are building something that you really believe in and you're really passionate about and you need it for your own family and you think it's going to make the world a better place, it makes it so much easier to withstand the challenges and withstand the fears. My kids eat our products probably four days a week at
Wow.
least, across different day parts, like breakfast, snack, lunch. I made a peanut butter and jelly sandwich on our mini waffles for my daughter today. And I frequently had the experience where I'm like in the kitchen preparing, breakfast, snack, or lunch for them with our products. And I'm like, thank goodness for Evergreen. Like, I just got to keep charging through, because like I need these products. And it just, to have that organic need just makes it so much easier to keep charging forward.
Well, that was the most amazing answer ever to that question. And I was laying up to, like, what should people not be so afraid of? If they're entering the industry and maybe it's like their first rodeo, and if you could impart one piece of wisdom where it's like, hey guys, this seems scary, but don't worry, you got this.
I would say negative feedback,
Mm.
and that can come from consumers. Like, not everybody's going to like your product. That can come from investors. Not everybody's going to say yes. In fact, most people are going to say no. And so in this world, you need to develop a thick skin really fast, because it's just, your product could be the most amazing product ever. And your P&L could be in the most amazing shape ever. And you're still going to get those, negative reviews and no's.
Yeah.
So trying to not be scared of those and not take it personally, and be able to kind of reframe and look at all the positive feedback, right? There's going to be bad apples everywhere, but look at the positive feedback, and don't take for granted those people who take time out of their day to send you a message and say how much your product means to them. Like, that never gets old. That is still the coolest thing. And my favorite part of this job is hearing from people like you who use our product and love it. Because to me, I still feel like I'm, in my kitchen with my Vitamix making waffles for my kids sometimes. So it's very surreal, but incredibly, incredibly rewarding, and such a privilege to be invited into people's homes and be a part of their breakfast tables and their routines. So, yeah, don't be afraid of the negativity, and don't let yourself focus, too much on it.
I love that. Okay. It's such a high note to end on. Thank you so, so much for joining me. This has been a really fun and inspiring conversation. And my very last question for you is just how you've helped everybody with your wisdom and advice and fearlessness. How can we be the most helpful to you as listeners, and where can we find Evergreen? I mean, it's a lot of places now, so it's a long list.
Thank you. Yes, you can. Our website is eatevergreen.com. Would love if you'd follow us on our socials. We're at Eat Evergreen across all the platforms. And then please go try us. We are in Whole Foods nationwide, Sprouts nationwide, whole bunch of Kroger's, whole bunch of Targets, whole bunch of Walmarts, and a whole bunch of other places. But you can find us. We've got a great store locator on our website, so you can start there.
Thank you again. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Commerce is Chaos. If you're listening, I have a feeling you know just how much good leaving a 5-star review can do for a team. Drop us a review on Apple Podcasts and subscribe to Commerce is Chaos wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe to our Substack, also called Commerce is Chaos, for more good stuff and actionable tools to build your business.